Imagine walking into a high-end boutique. The staff looks right through you. Cold, short answers, the kind that end conversations before they start. Then you shift your wrist. The light catches a $100,000 Daytona, and everything changes. The manager steps in, offers you a drink. For the next 10 minutes, you are the most important person in the room. Society doesn't care about your character. Cares about what you signal. Human beings are hardwired to judge wealth in less than a second, and a 40mm piece of metal is the ultimate shortcut. Here is the part nobody tells you. While the middle class goes into debt for a Rolex just to buy a few minutes of temporary respect, the people who've actually made it, the quiet multimillionaires, are wearing $50 Casios on purpose to blend in, to stay invisible. This is the story of how that works. Not the marketing version. The real one, what a watch actually buys you, what it actually costs, and who's really collecting the difference. You feel the air conditioning before you feel anything else. Cold, particular, the kind of cold that costs money to produce. The boutique is white and gold and almost silent, and the man behind the counter looks at you for exactly as long as politeness requires and not 1 second more. He says hello. He does not move toward you. You ask about the Daytona in the case. He tells you the price like he's reading a weather report. Then his eyes drop, just for a second, to your left wrist. The cheap rubber strap, the digital face, the watch that has survived 3 years of showers and gym bags and never once asked you for anything. You don't know it yet, but he decided who you are in under 4 seconds. And he is about to be wrong in a way that will cost him a sale, and right in a way that explains almost everything about how money actually moves through the world. You leave without buying anything. You don't go home angry. You go home thinking. This is not a story about a watch. It starts the way most expensive decisions start, with a small, specific humiliation you tell yourself you've shrugged off and haven't. A coworker's wedding. A photo afterward. 12 people, arms around each other, and you, slightly behind, slightly to the side, your sleeve rolled just enough to show a watch no one will ever ask about. Not because it's ugly, because it's invisible. In a room full of people learning what their watches could say for them, saying nothing felt, for the first time, like losing. You don't remember deciding to want a Rolex. You remember deciding you were done being looked past. The watch never lied. It would say something true about what you could afford, even if what it said wasn't true about who you actually were. Here is the foil. Call him Daniel. Same income bracket as you, same year you both got promoted. While you're reading watch forums, he's reading fund prospectuses. While you're calculating financing payments, he's automating a transfer he never has to think about again. He wears a $30 Timex with a cracked link he hasn't bothered replacing. You don't think of Daniel as smarter. You think of him as boring. The foil never looks like he's winning. He looks like he's missing out. You don't know it yet, but in 11 months, one of you will have a watch and a payment. The other will have a number that quietly doubled. So you buy it. Not the real one, not yet. You buy the story first. You convince yourself this is an investment. Rolexes hold value, you've read. You are not spending money, you tell yourself. You are moving it from a checking account into a more respectable shape. The watch isn't bought to keep time. It's bought to be seen by people whose opinion you've decided matters more than it should. Have you ever done this? Trusted something, not because you checked, but because everyone around you already had? The financing is interest-free for 18 months, which is the kind of phrase designed to be heard and not finished. You sign. You wear it the next day to the boutique you'd stood outside of, feeling looked past 6 months earlier. Not to buy anything, just to see. It works immediately. The same kind of man who barely looked at you the first time now offers you a seat. A drink. He uses the model name like a password between members of the same club. The watch never lied. The room around it did. For about 6 weeks you feel like you found a cheat code for a game you didn't know you'd been losing. Restaurants seat you faster. A car salesman who was condescending on the phone turns warm in person. The second he clocks your wrist. People aren't responding to you. They're responding to a signal, and a signal can be borrowed, financed, performed. A friend, older, already wealthy in the boring, automated Daniel kind of way, told you once, almost in passing, that the moment you need a thing to be noticed is the moment it's working against you. You laughed it off. Think about the last time you stayed in something longer than you should have. What made you stay? Here is what the watch actually cost you, underneath the number on the invoice. The financing felt, on paper, like nothing. Spread across 18 months, it sat in the same category as a car note, except this one produced no transportation, no equity. Nothing it did for you showed up anywhere except your wrist, which meant your margin for error shrank. The cushion that used to absorb a flat tire, a dentist bill, a slow month, pre-spent now on being looked at differently by people who would never learn your name, comes on a Thursday. Your car needs a transmission repair you didn't see coming. $1,100 due now, not negotiable. You do the math twice because the first time felt wrong. It isn't wrong. The gap between what's available and what's required is, almost exactly, the size of your watch payment. You sit in the driver's seat for a long moment. You don't start the engine. One night, weeks later, you open the resale app just to look. Your thumb hovers over the list for sale button. You don't press it. You don't press it because somewhere underneath the math, the watch has become load-bearing. Selling it doesn't just lose you money. It loses you the version of the boutique where the manager offers you a drink. You're not protecting an asset anymore. You're protecting a feeling, and feelings don't show up on a balance sheet, which is exactly why they're so expensive to keep. The watch never lied. You did, to yourself, in the quiet arithmetic of "I can afford this," which had technically been true and functionally false at the same time. But the invoice was never the real transaction. For other participants walked away from it better off, and you were the only one left holding a liability. The watch company sold a product and got paid the moment it left the factory. The boutique earned a margin, the gap between cost and price. The financing company earned interest for letting you feel the watch before you'd paid for it. The shareholders earned a return in a portfolio you'll never see, simply because enough people in enough cities made the exact decision you just made. This is not a story about bad people. The watch company made a good product. The boutique trained its staff well. That is what should unsettle you. You don't need a villain for this system to work exactly as designed, only a buyer who wants to be looked at, and a structure patient enough to wait for one to walk in. While you were financing a signal, somebody else in that chain was quietly buying ownership, an asset that pays them again next month whether or not anyone ever notices their wrist. A Rolex is mechanically a watch. It tells time within a few seconds a day, the same as a much cheaper one. What you're actually buying is positioning, a signal legible at a glance that tells a room something about you before you've said a word. There's a reason this kind of buying intensifies exactly when it does. The more uncertain people feel about their own status, a new job, a new city, a friend who just bought a house, the more valuable a status symbol becomes in that moment. Not because the watch changed, because the uncertainty did. This isn't a conspiracy. An entire industry has simply learned, through decades of data, exactly which moments make people most willing to pay for reassurance. The salesperson benefits from a commission, the boutique from a margin, the financing company from interest that costs it almost nothing to lend, the brand from another data point proving the price can climb again next year. Nobody needed to wish you harm. Incentives do the work. Everyone was simply responding, rationally, to a structure built to turn your need to be seen into someone else's recurring revenue. This is the part of the story underneath the story, the part that actually separates the two paths you and Daniel were on. The wealthiest people spend their lives acquiring ownership, a share of a company, a piece of property, a position that pays them again next month whether or not anyone is watching. Most consumers spend their lives acquiring signals instead, purchased on terms that quietly produce a payment instead of an income. One choice produces future cash flow. The other produces future payments. From the outside, they look almost identical. But one of them is working for you while you sleep, and the other is waiting for a payment by the 5th of the month. Research on actual American millionaires backs this up. Most live in middle-class neighborhoods, drive used cars, and avoid luxury purchases entirely. Not because they can't afford them, but because they've already built the thing the purchase is trying to fake. The $40 Casio on an actual wealthy person's wrist isn't humility. It's proof they stopped playing the signaling game the day they no longer needed to win it. You don't know it yet, but the way out doesn't look like a bigger watch. It looks like a smaller one. 18 months pass the way debt always passes. Slower in the middle, faster than you expect at the end. The final payment clears on an ordinary Tuesday. You check the account, see the balance line disappear, and go back to making dinner. Nobody throws you a party. You almost miss the moment yourself. The Casio costs you $50 months later, almost as an afterthought. You wear it into a different boutique, not to test anything this time. You've stopped needing to test it. The manager is polite, professional, exactly as warm as professionalism requires, and not 1 degree more. It doesn't sting the way you thought it would. The watch never lied. It told the truth about a number on an invoice every single time, in every room you wore it into. The lying, if there was any, happened in the space between your wrist and your sense of who you were, and that space was never the watch's responsibility to manage. It was always yours. Maybe you've already seen this pattern somewhere in your own life. Not with a watch, maybe with a car, a kitchen, a vacation you couldn't quite afford but could absolutely justify. Maybe you're in the middle of something that feels a little like this right now, and you haven't said so out loud to anyone. This was never really about a watch. It was about what the watch represented. A signal, purchased on credit, inside a system built quietly enough that almost no one notices they're standing inside it until the bill arrives on an ordinary Thursday. The watch never lied. You're still deciding whether you did. What's actually on your wrist right now, and who is it really talking to?